Welcome into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, we've had ourselves another week here in Cincinnati, full of sports. We were talking through our pre-show, and it was jam-packed. But let's start off with your Cincinnati Reds rattling off 4 in a row and giving us something to talk about in regards to the Reds, that they're doing something right, because it didn't come against a nobody. It came against the LA Dodgers, who they finished with a series win for the season against. They actually have one against the Phillies as well, and against everybody else that are just apparently really bad.
So how do you explain that other than it's just baseball and it's strange and there's so many games and you can have these anomalies like this over the course of a season? But think about this. The Reds are what, 8 games under 500, something like that. They now own the tiebreaker for the postseason, if it would come down to that, over the Dodgers and the Phillies.
That's stupid.
Cool to funk.
Absolutely
That's insane that they would be able to do that. And that's where they are. But yeah, it was great to see them finally spring to life. And you felt like they had to at some point. And so all is not yet lost. They're actually, today it's not going well. Tonight it's not. They're back to not hitting the darn ball. And I feel like Abbott was probably left in the game a little too long. He should have had a very short leash in that 7th inning, where if a runner reached and nobody was out, might be time to get him out of there, but they didn't. Gives up the 2-run homer, then gives up a triple right after that. But it's one game. It's just nice to see that they have shown some life, and maybe we'll get some excitement out of this season here. We'll see.
It's almost not fair to say that about Abbott, because he was pulled too early in his last start.
I know, and yes, he was. You are right.
I know.
You are right. But no, I'm just looking at, he really didn't have that many. I don't know what he was, around 90 pitches or whatever tonight. But when you're going through that lineup again and again and again, and then it gets to the 7th inning, you got to start thinking, I may have to get this guy out of there if things start to go south, because at that point in the game, they can go south in a hurry on a starter, even if he's been throwing well. And, he gave up the early home run. The Reds were able to answer that, and it was a game. But look, not going to win them all, and you can't complain about that guy. I just do wish they may have had a little shorter leash there in the 7th inning, been a little, especially the way that bullpen's been throwing. Not sure I saw that coming either. And it's so crazy. How do you figure Nick Martinez and his splits with relieving versus starting, and even in just the last week? He started a game and it did not go very well, gave up like 5 runs. And then he comes in after 1 or 2 outs the other day and then pitches like 4+ good innings. I don't know what it is about him when he starts versus coming in a game in relief. But again, that's crazy. Baseball is nuts like that. Over the course of 162 games, you're going to have a lot of oddities, and I've seen a number of oddities already this season with the Reds. But again, at least they showed signs of life. And what they got to do is go out tomorrow, win this series. And, you look at the schedule and it's like they've gotten a lot of the tough stuff out of the way. We talked about the Dodgers and the Phillies. Now they can get back into that Central Division, where maybe if they can have some success there, they climb right back in the thick of this thing.
Yeah, I got the standings pulled up right now. As of currently, I believe that's prior to this game that they're in being over. They're 3.5 back for the final wild card spot.
Yep.
And that's certainly within striking distance.
Oh, I heard that yesterday. I couldn't believe it. It's like I didn't even want to look at the wild card because I'm like, I don't want to start that yet and give up on the division. But when I heard it was 3.5, it's like, holy smokes. That's nothing with what's left on the schedule.
And 7.5 back from Milwaukee, who leads everything. 6 games under 500. You were talking about Martinez and the bullpen. I believe I saw. I want to say I know Fernando Cruz was. I think it was. I know he was top 5. I want to say he was number 2 in FWAR. I still don't know what any of these advanced metrics measure, but I know that one was like 1.2, 1.3 for FWAR, and Nick Martinez was in the top 10, if not also in the top 5. Perhaps
he's been more than acceptable in the bullpen. Nick has. Yeah. It's just those starts have bloated his numbers. But Cruz has been phenomenal. These last 3 or 4 outings, he's been really, really special. And when he's got that splitter going, he is tough, tough, tough. I mean, that pitch is so darn nasty. And he had it going when I just saw him pitch. Was that yesterday? I guess it was when he struck all those guys out. He's fun to watch, and I'm really happy for him. His path has been crazy to make it to this point because he's not a young guy. You know, he's played for pretty much every team imaginable in professional baseball, Mexican League, you name it. Was a position player, then transitioned into pitching, and you know, it's been a journey for that guy to get to where he is. So you kind of want to see him have success, and it's good to see him have the kind of success he's had lately. And it just is that much better that he's doing it for a team I follow, like the Reds.
Speaking of success in pitching, Hunter Green has been pitching out of his mind, truthfully.
Yeah.
He has an ERA, and this comes courtesy of Mo Egger, friend of the network here. But he's the 104th highest paid starting pitcher in 2024, has an ERA of 2.45 over his last 7 starts, pitched 44 innings during that span, and has given up only 2 home runs. Ranks in the top 10 this season in adjusted ERA plus, fewest home runs per 9 innings pitched. Just in strikeouts per 9 innings pitched and WAR. Just looking back at the contract that they signed Hunter Green to on his extension, might not look so bad right now. Now that everybody was freaking out about him at the beginning of the season, after what, 3 starts, like we're already freaking out about somebody. I don't know.
Right.
I don't ever freak out about anybody until you're looking, I don't know, July back at the whole season, wondering if somebody can pick themselves up out of a basement or something. But yeah. I'm not concerned about anything going on, especially when we all know how the weather can be in Cincinnati in April, May, those early baseball months.
Yeah, it seems like he's turning into a pitcher too, more so. And you know, he still has the issue with the pitch efficiency a little bit. Not as bad as it was. That's coming around. It's getting better. But he's going to have that issue when you throw a lot of pitches that people swing and miss at. You're going to start racking up a lot of pitches. You know, he gives up a lot of foul balls on 2-strike pitches, and just sometimes it goes deeper into the count, or certainly more pitches than you want to throw to put somebody away. But he's getting all that. I mean, it really has been. You go back, so his May was pretty darn good all the way through. And then halfway back into April, he's had really good starts for the most part. I think one of his worst outings, and this was not a bad outing. I remember it was, you know, maybe got to the 7th inning, allowing 4 runs or something, but he's been pretty darn good. So it's great to see him blossoming like he is. It was good to see Nick Lodolo just come right back yesterday and throw the way he did.
Right.
And, you know, he was obviously on a short leash coming off the injury and just getting his way back. But, you know, 5 1/3 good innings, 80 pitches, 81 pitches, whatever it was. it's you feel like when you see those two doing that, Abbott a little bit of a blip tonight, but he wasn't that bad. It was that 2-run homer in the seventh burned him, but not bad. I mean, there is hope here. They are, I'd like to see Ashcraft be a little better than what he's been, but these young guys that they've been banking on to be good starting pitchers, they're starting to turn into those guys they thought they could be. And if they just keep them healthy and keep them out there, and that's mainly aimed at Nick Lodolo. You got 3 guys like that are young. That's a lot to build around, and not just build around, but maybe still have success yet this year.
Yeah, it's certainly encouraging. You got guys like Fraley. Fraley is back in the lineup after last week. We weren't sure if he was going to miss any time or not, having just been hit by that pitch in the hand. You also have TJ Friedel back as early as next week, potentially. That's what
he
it
could
sounds
even
like.
be back this week, I saw, where, depending on how he was feeling after his latest round, he could be back and still play a game in May.
So we'll certainly keep an eye on that. But even the guys that they've brought up that have been filling in far more time than probably you or I anticipated at the beginning of the season, in a guy like Hertzbees or
right.
Fairchild's been just playing much higher level than I anticipated, especially with his defense out there in center field. He's made some tremendous catches over the course.
Especially the other night was as good as it gets.
Yeah,
the guy in the outfield. He made 2 really, really good plays out there,
and he isn't afraid to give up his body to do so.
Right. So and in the past week, Candelario's back on it, Steer's back on it, which is good to see. India's played well at the plate, and
that grand slam was fantastic.
Had the grand slam against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So he's kind of come back to life and has a pretty good on base percentage here lately. Overall, I think they're still dead last in the National League in batting average, but their production is coming around and it's getting up, and when you look at that, they're hitting like 216 or whatever it is for the season.
Trash.
How are they right? I mean, how have they won any games? Because that is trash. That's terrible. Yeah. So they're hanging.
I can't answer that. Yeah, they are. It's been a weird season, and obviously we hope that the health bug goes away, the injury bug goes away, and these guys can start to figure out who we can maybe we can figure out, the staff can figure out, the players can figure out who this team is. Because right now, I don't really know. Biggest news this week, I guess, was probably the retirement of the Viking helmet. I thought
what was that all about?
I thought it was an odd time in the middle of this win streak that you're just going to be like, you know what? I think we're done with it. In the middle of it wasn't like they retired it and then they went on the win streak. It wasn't like you waited until the win streak was over. They just decided to do it just mid win streak. I don't understand.
I don't either. That one I found very odd, and I did not see an explanation all the way through. I heard it referred to, but I don't know what brought that or why. Maybe they felt like it was a curse because everyone was getting hurt and things weren't working well. But again, like you said, after they win a couple, you'd think you might not change anything, but they did. And it's funny. I saw people are still showing up at the stadium wearing that thing, though. I still see fans in the stands wearing the Viking helmet.
Well, sure, because it's only been like 2 days or whatever since they decided to retire it. Because even after, I want to say, even after India's Grand Slam, they were still putting it on him. So I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I thought it was weird, and now that you've publicized that you're retiring it, you can't very well bring it back. It's done. This is it. You've put it to bed. I don't know if that includes the weird bent batting practice bat.
Yeah, whatever that thing was. And
I don't know if they're getting rid of that as
the
well.
rope's gone, right? The whole deal.
I would assume so. And
Yeah.
I saw somewhere they said that was for last year's team. They wanted to kind of leave that with last year. I think that was Stevenson who answered that question. And apparently, there's been reports that they now do this thing where they run down the hallway in the like from the dugout to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
I'd be with all the injuries that they've had this season, I'd be really nervous about them doing that unless you have some type of carpet down, because I don't want guys in spikes running down a concrete hallway.
No, I would much rather them put a set of horns on their head and a robe on them and just walk down through the dugout with a nice wooden floor. Yeah, I'm with you. But hopefully, you mentioned Friedel coming back. CES ought to be back at some point in June. McLean is just God knows when. I mean,
August.
that's what I'm guessing at the earliest is August. It's very it's not good when you read the injury updates. And the last injury update on him, it says, McLean and manager David Bell still say the plan is for him to come back and play at some point this season. So that's not real encouraging that he will be back anytime soon. But you hope that they're still hanging in there in August and he can come back and maybe help them out a little bit and provide a spark and see what happens down the stretch. They just got to hang in there. And hopefully they go out and win this series tomorrow. It's tonight's game. If they put that away, yep, it looks like 7-1 the final.
Over. Yep.
What they have? They end up with 3 hits.
4 hits.
4, yeah. Not a great offensive performance by any stretch tonight, but just go out and win the series tomorrow. Just win series and hang in there, and that's something they didn't do for quite a while, was win a series. And so win this series and then go on the road, and you're not going back out west like it seems like they've done that twice this season already. Maybe that schedule will lighten up a little bit and they can make up a little bit of ground because a lot of time left.
You mentioned timetables for guys to come back. That puts us at, I believe the count would be either 54 or 55 games now in total, which means that Noelve Marte only has about 25 games left to serve of his suspension before he's eligible to come back. So he's looking at roughly about a month before his return as well. So if you can just tread water, there are the cavalry is coming. They're going to trickle in little by little, but the cavalry is coming.
That rule too, with the suspended players for PEDs being ineligible for the postseason is very weird, especially when he's suspended now in the first half of the season. It's just so weird that he could come back, play the entire second half, and then not play in the postseason. It's
not eligible in the postseason, right?
That's the rules. That's the punishment. Don't do things you shouldn't be doing, and this won't happen to you.
I agree. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night as Cincinnati takes on the St. Louis Cardinals one more time in the rubber match. Actually, it's the businessman special tomorrow at 1:10 before they travel to Chicago to finish up your weekend. In any case, Cincinnati Bearcats baseball team has ended their season. They were one of the first 4 out as Jordan Bischel and company is unable to get over the hump at the end of the season. They only ended up getting one of the 3 games against Oklahoma. The game against UConn ends up being rained out, and you lose to UCF to start your postseason. You beat Texas, but then Texas Tech gets you, and it was all for naught. They finished as I believe the third team out on the last 4 out, or first 4 out. Exceeded all expectations.
Totally exceeded all expectations. And that's just the razor's edge. I mean, if they win that game with Texas Tech, does that mean they likely were in? That's how close it was. Or that's how close.
Or UConn.
Right. Or the UConn game. Right. If they could have played that and won it. That's got to hurt like heck. when you're one of those guys. And you win what, 32 games or something, and 33 might have gotten in, just one somewhere along the way against somebody with a pulse. But again, you're right, exceeded everything. I never thought they would get a whiff. It does make you excited about, what lays ahead for the future. And, they've got to get that pitching fixed, but they do have some good young options in that department too that they found this year.
Now, you're a guy who likes to go to the Bearcats baseball games yourself. And so how excited are you then for next year, now that you've seen what Jordan Bischel was able to put together in what was kind of a rough shot offseason for a guy coming in for his first stint with the Bearcats and as they go into the Big 12?
Well, very excited because, obviously this guy knows what it takes to win and can figure it out and can figure out a team. Now he's got a year with them under, and he knows what he's got. And he, has an idea of what he needs to bring in. And all indications are he's got the contacts and the reputation to go out and get it and get the guys here that he needs. I'm very excited to see what he does. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air to have a team actually do what they did this year and compete for a spot in the postseason tournament and, win some big games against some big time Big 12 programs. So I'm very excited about that. And, I don't pretend to know a whole lot about the programs coming in next year, but it's just going to get tougher and tougher as this thing goes along when they add those other programs. I know Oklahoma and Texas are going away, but
Right.
Arizona State probably bring decent, although I think Arizona State may have struggled some this year. But my guess is, Arizona State way back when was one of the premier programs in the country. Them, USC. There were a few, but Arizona State, Barry Bonds played there, for God's sake. So they had some talent come through.
Yeah, it should be. I don't know. It just another program. It feels like everybody, but I guess I don't want to say football didn't seem like they had an idea as to what they were getting into, but largely it seemed like every program had a pretty good idea as to what they were getting into. Football's got some things to work out, and we'll see.
And we kind of knew that going in too. When you saw, look, you had a coaching change on top of it, which baseball did too, but the football thing was a little different. Where you lost some guys that were going to be coming in, and then some other guys drifted away because, look, it was just a bad storm for UC to be changing coaches and changing conferences in a sport like football, because it takes a while to get that depth going. And, especially when you're talking about on the lines, and they did have the offensive line for the most part come back, and it's going to come back this year, but still, we saw what happened defensively. I mean, they just got overmatched, and we didn't think that would happen as badly as it did, but it did. There wasn't depth on the defensive line. The linebackers probably weren't what we thought they were, and the DBs certainly weren't. And, they took an injury hit or two there that certainly made a difference too, where, they didn't have the talent that they hoped they had. So, hopefully with an extra year and what they're trying to do with, the model they're following now to acquire talent and identifying the portal and the recruits, hopefully we start seeing a little more traction in that department. At least we better, because I don't know what the fans are going to do if they have to go through another season like last year. We don't even want to think about that, right?
I'm just not gonna acknowledge you said that. So we're gonna move topics. Topics. I did want to mention that it looks like Aziz Bandaogo has withdrawn from the NBA draft and will be back with Cincinnati next season, and kind of cement Cincinnati being a top 25 team. So that's been reported. Just wanted to.
And that's to be expected, I think, by everybody.
It was.
Yeah, and then I guess Wes is going to hold court tomorrow and
Mhm.
and maybe fill us in on everything that's going on with the basketball team, which is quite honestly very exciting.
And I did
What
see Dylan Mitchell had a picture from the plane saying he was on his way to Cincinnati. So summer workouts are coming up real quick, and it seems like the band's getting together for the first time. So like to see it.
Yep,
Um,
it'll be fun to watch.
but the Cincinnati Bengals, they had OTAs that started today. Um, involuntary, I'm sorry, voluntary
Voluntary.
voluntary mini camps started. Um, but before we get to what happened in voluntary mini camp, I think the biggest news of the offseason was announced last week that Zach Taylor was going to be stepping back in play calling
Yeah, what
as
about
he
that?
as he lets his new offensive coordinator actually take over more play calling.
Which to me is a little strange in that, look, Dan Pitcher knows what he's doing. Um, I'm sure, I'm sure Zach certainly trusts him. But what was going on before? You had an experienced offensive coordinator, albeit somewhat young, but good enough that has become a head coach now.
Right.
And so you would think that's the guy that you would have trusted that with last year, the year before. And I don't know what completely precipitated this, but that's what Zach needs to do. He really does. I mean, just for his own sanity, and that's he'll still have his fingers in it, but it's good for him to just have the head coaching role and let Pitch do the micromanaging there. Let Lou do his micromanaging, and then you're around as the extra layer of administration to help oversee this stuff. So, but it is very interesting that happens now. Like I just was very surprised by that.
I was completely caught off guard,
Yep.
and I didn't think he was ever going to relinquish any play calling at any
Right.
point. And even if he did, I didn't think we would find out about it. It would come out as like a press leak, or it would come out as rumors circulating. It wouldn't come out as just point blank. We know about it. He's drawn, like, just coming back off of it, and I don't know. The whole thing just surprised the hell out of me, and I think it's long overdue. I think he runs a good locker room, but I was at the point where I thought it was best if they part ways if he wasn't going to give up the offensive play calling at several points last season. And now that he's given up the play calling, which I never thought that we would see that day, I think that's good. It gives him the opportunity to focus on things like using timeouts correctly, or focus on things like making sure that egos are checked, or different conversations are had, instead of having to worry about, oh, this is going on the field. But I also need to make the next play call. Somebody else handle it. I think he's really good at checking people's attitudes. I think he's really good at just who he is. I mean, we had Solomon Wilcots on this very show talking about just how good his character is, how good he is at leading that locker room. Do the things that you're good at. I don't know that you're actually good at calling offensive play calls.
Right. And it is just the timing of it is weird to have a first year offensive coordinator and turn it over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in his defense, maybe he realized maybe that's what he needed to do. And he was, kind of muddying the waters a little bit more than he needed to. And he's been brilliant at all the other things, the big picture stuff. He's from the time he walked in that building, he's had that team playing hard. He's never lost the locker room, even that first year when they were terrible. Well, were they 2-14, I think? Never lost that locker room. Had guys believing that they were doing the right things and approaching it the right way. And certainly that came to fruition pretty quickly in the following years, that they were doing things the right way. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And I wish I had a little more insight into the whys and the why now part of it, but it's very interesting that A, that it happened, and B, that we know about it. Because you're right. That's something that generally you might find out at some point during the season or something that oh, well, he hasn't been doing it. It's just odd to get it out there, but obviously he, or in talking, and I'm sure it's been in talking with everybody in that organization that's in his inner circle, probably thought it was the right thing to do. And why now, I don't know, but maybe that speaks highly of Dan Pitcher too, although I think Callahan was pretty damn good at what he did as well.
I agree. Just caught me off guard.
Yeah, it is. That's a head scratcher.
I'm probably more excited to see what happens through camp and such now than maybe I was, because there's plenty of new pieces, as they all did report to camp today. The new pieces anyway, outside of Trent Brown on offense. I think everybody else was there for the most part.
Yeah, Sheldon Rankins was
Yep.
Out as well. I don't worry about those veterans missing that stuff so much. Would it be nice? Yeah, you would like them all there for this, but
and Trent Brown was a logistical issue because he was also supposed to throw out the first pitch tonight. But Amarius Sims actually got, or I'm sorry, Mims. He got to throw the first pitch tonight because of the logistical issue.
How did he do? I didn't get to see it. Was it a good one?
I only read about the flip flop. I didn't actually read
some
about
of those guys are pretty good, and others don't have a clue what they're doing. I'm just curious if Mims if he's got a gun or not.
Yeah.
Then there were two big ones missing.
There were two big ones missing. You had wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 1 both missing. With Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both missing the first day of camp. I read somewhere, and I don't know how much stock to put into this, but I read somewhere that it's common for them to miss. That said, I don't think anybody's surprised that T. Higgins doesn't show up for the first day of voluntary camp, as he has not yet signed his tender. You have to sign your tender to show up for these practices, and he has yet to do so. So he's still, we're still waiting on that. He's still following the blueprint that Jesse Bates set with the same agent. So again, this is probably much ado about nothing. But the head scratcher is, I guess, Jamar Chase not showing up.
Yeah, that surprised me. And we'll see. They've got a mandatory coming up. We'll see if he's there. If he doesn't, then things might get ugly because, but I don't think he wants to make a move until he sees what his buddy Justin Jefferson does and that whole deal. And so I don't know what's going through his head, but you don't want to see this get that messy. And I don't think it will, but it is a little curious that he wouldn't be there. And it's definitely, while I'll say, it might throw off an alarm bell, it's not a 4 alarm yet, but it is an alarm.
Yeah, you got a red flag up, but he is under contract. That's a little bit different than T. Higgins, as he is under his 5th-year extension on his rookie deal. So, of course, he will be a free agent after this season, as will T. Higgins. So maybe they're able to work something out in his extension, knowing that I would safely assume that he's probably priority number 1 over T. Higgins. But you think they're going to figure something out, and maybe it comes in the off season, maybe it comes sometime during the season. But I don't foresee them going into next off season without a deal already in place. They're not going to try and franchise tag into a situation where they can continue negotiating with Jamar Chase. I would not think.
No, I would think after this season, they'll get something done with him and lock him up. And maybe before, who knows? I don't know what's going on. I just know that it is a little curious that now he's not there, and I just hope it doesn't get ugly. I don't expect it to, but we will see. We will see. I would think there would have been a little more posturing by now,
I agree.
if that's the road they're going down. If he's going to saber rattle and want something done now, I don't think you'd be waiting this long to make that known. I would think something would have been out there well before now.
Now, that all said, there were guys who were there as receivers dressed in those, those jerseys, lining up on the outside, lining up on the inside. And from all counts, Burton has a lot of chemistry early on with Joe Burrow. That's certainly exciting to hear. And even Yosevis, he's had plenty of chemistry going on with Joe already, as he's had some reps open up that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise. I wanted to bring this up to you. Is this maybe the deepest tight end room that Joe Burrow has had, that the Bengals have had? I don't know when the last time was they had this deep of a tight end room.
Yeah, it is actually. It is. And, having Gesicki come in and get the early raves he's gotten from the DBs about the matchup nightmare he can be when they put him in the slot and do different things with him, which they can do. I mean, he's a good athlete. He's not going to burn you deep, but he's a good athlete. He's a big target. And so they've got some options there that they haven't really had before.
You got the two rookies as well.
Yeah.
And Drew Sample back for inexplicably another season. But he is
he knows what he's doing.
He's a good blocker. He's a good blocker. And when they do throw it to him, more often than not, he shows that he has soft hands.
Right. Yeah. And probably also it's, yes, Chase and Higgins aren't there, but all indications are Burrow looks pretty darn good for a guy coming off surgery, and that he's, if not on pace, ahead of pace with the way he's throwing the football. And all the reports and everything the coaches are saying is, he's got the same old zip on that ball. And that's great to hear. Now, I'm going to hold my breath, because he's got to have a training camp where he gets all the way through, right?
Well, I was going to say it's great to hear all of these things by people who are both employed by the Cincinnati Bengals, whether it be as voices or as reporters of the Bengals, looking at you, Dan Horde and Butch, but also people who are not employed by the Cincinnati Bengals, largely Paul Daner. He's been mentioning the same things, and even Schefter's been reporting as well, and certain things that he does have the zip, and they're not going to be dialing things back for him. He's looking to go in. It was reported today he was fitting things in tight windows and kind of getting back to what we expect to see out of Joe Burrow, but doing that on day one.
Yeah, and
so not
just
easing
amazing.
Things.
It's amazing, though, that the bad luck he's had with training camps, and what once was an appendectomy, another time, that calf injury. Then he was coming back from knee surgery, and then his rookie year, there weren't even camps because of COVID and all that.
I forgot about that.
It just was crazy. I mean, that poor guy has not been able to go through a full training camp yet.
Nope.
And you might say, okay, well, maybe that accounts for the slow starts, but not really, because it didn't seem like he was the issue. It was more keeping him upright was the issue.
The offensive line, right?
And there were, and they did say there were times maybe he held the ball too long, but no, a couple of those games, that offensive line got steamrolled. And that's why I hope during training camp, we see them out there a little more together, and maybe, they get a couple of quarters in one of those preseason games playing together, and just please get out there and get the rust off and have everything ready to go on week one. But all that being said, I'm glad the schedule sets up the way it does too. We know they got to be ready in week 2, but you got to be ready in week 1. But at least they're not getting steamrolled with a tough schedule early. They do have a little leeway here if they happen to get off to a little sluggish start like they have over the past couple of seasons. There's a
So if
couple
I had,
teams, not that you can just go out there and throw it on the field and win it any week in the NFL, but if I were going to bet, which I may, I know which way I'll bet on these early games.
so if I had to ask 5 guys that you want to either see highlights from, see tape from, or read up on how they do through this these voluntary camps, before we get to actual camp in the fall, like in the summer, what names are you looking for if you had to look for 5 names?
I'll tell you. Burton, Gesicki. Now, this is going to be bad, but Brown and Mims, it's all offensive guys I named so far. Defensively, who do I have to worry about defensively? Rankins, if he gets to camp.
Okay.
I don't have to worry about him, but I want to know that he's going to be able to help there. You know, his numbers last year, good across the board, but he had that spectacular game against the Bengals that accounted for most of his sacks and stuff. But I want to see that defensive line not take a step back, you know, because they've had to change a couple of people. I want them to still do their thing, still wreak havoc, and so that's what I would say. What about you? Who am I missing defensively?
Well, so I want to go back to the offensive side of the ball. Joe Burrow. I want to read about Joe Burrow. Because I want to know how he's progressing and make sure he's not looking off, or there wasn't something he did and now they're concerned with him taking a couple snaps off or a couple plays off, or you know what I mean? Like
right.
Or had to leave camp early that day, or I don't want any of that. So I'm very curious about Joe. I'm also curious. I'm trying to decide if I'm more curious about Zach Moss or about Chase Brown, because I think both of them are going to push each other through camp. I think they're probably, in my estimation, going to raise each other's floors. And so one of those two, I think when you read about one, you're probably going to read about the other. I think they're interchangeable. So I'm only going to count that as one. So that's where I'm at offensively. I think the other stuff with Joe will come as well, but I'm more interested in those two positions. Defensively, Dax Hill is a giant question mark for me. I'm curious where they put him. I'm curious if he's going to – he had the second most snaps at the slot behind Mike Hilton. So I'm curious to see if they put him on the outside, if they put him on the inside. Where is Dax Hill going to fit? Or is he going to be a guy that come towards the end of the preseason, are they looking to move him for a different piece to bring in? I don't know. I'm very curious what happens with the Dax Hill experiment that has seemingly gone a little awry. So that's a big one for me. Chris Jenkins, I think that guy has a motor that doesn't stop. I think that guy has been nothing but smiles in every single. He looks like a guy who just you want to be his friend. I think that if you were still reporting, you'd probably love Chris Jenkins.
He would be a go-to guy.
I think he's going to have a soundbite anytime anybody has a microphone in front of him. But I think he's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to see what he brings to this defense. I'm really excited to see what he brings to this defensive line, because I don't know what they're going to do with even McKinley, who they just drafted as well, when you're trying to get Chris Jenkins in. I think that's going to be an interesting juggle between who they have on the defensive line. And outside of that,
I'll throw another one out there, and it's just Von Bell. I hope he is still Von Bell.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll go with that. That's fine. We can wrap that up with my fifth. Because that whole safety position, you got guys who have been here, you've got guys who used to be here. So there's a lot of question marks there in that safety.
And, I know he had Jesse Bates with him too, but I mean, he was just such a big factor in helping turn this thing around and make that defense and that defensive backfield as good as they were. And I was thrilled to have him back, but nothing lasts forever, and so you just hope there's still plenty of gas left in that tank, and I'm sure there is. I mean, this guy's a workout fiend. He'll be the first one to know if he's starting to lose it.
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to worry about it, but I want him to be the same Von Bell that was here a couple of years ago.
There's plenty of position battles up and down this roster, including even punter. They brought in McNamara, a backup an undrafted free agent to challenge Brad Robbins, who I've not been impressed with, and we'll see. It's just another year where the punting carousel continues to turn. So we'll see what happens at that position.
Tell you what else is going to be fun is watching this whole new kickoff rule thing unfold.
Yeah.
And look, that I've been reading about that, and it is so nuts. Like, McPherson talking about it's kind of almost like chipping a field goal now, whereas he's used to just booming it, and now you kind of get penalized if you boom it. Now you got to kind of try to chip it inside the 5 or the 10, and it's going to be. I mean, I don't know. It's going to take some getting used to. I'm glad they're doing it, though. I'm glad the NFL is thinking outside the box a little bit on these things, so you can still have an exciting kickoff play, but not get everybody killed in the process.
I'm not ready to give them that type of credit yet because it was the USFL or the XFL or whoever was doing it last year. So it was already being done. It's not the NFL thinking outside the box.
But at least
they just adopted it.
Yeah, they're open to something because there's nothing worse. And I always said, hell, give the team an extra point if your kicker can kick the kickoff through the uprights. I mean, do something. Make it mean something other than just kicking it, out of play and you get the ball at the 25 or whatever.
Yep.
It's just I'm glad they're doing something. I don't want to mess it up too much, but they needed to do something to make that a play you want to watch.
I agree. But plenty to keep your eye out on this offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like I said, up and down the roster, you have just position battles galore. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. Normally, we don't start.
Him come in and he's just so good they got to play him.
I'm in on that. Sure.
I am too.
Anybody for that matter. I mean, if you got a Chris Jenkins or McKinley challenging one of the starters for who cares? Give me anybody challenging a guy. So it does nothing but make the team better. Yeah, I'm all for it. We normally don't start this segment so early, but I feel like it's finally time to give this team more than the final 2 minutes of the show because they're beating everybody. They scored not 3, George, but 4.
Wow.
4 goals in a game. But FC Cincinnati, don't look now. They are number 1 in their. Is it a division? I'm soccer dumb.
They're not okay. They're second in the conference behind Miami, but they're only a point behind, and Miami's played one more match. But in the power rankings, that the MLS does their own power rankings on MLS.com, and Cincinnati is now number 1 in the power rankings ahead of Miami, based on the 7 straight wins, which is amazing.
I still haven't bet them. I'm the reason for this, George.
I know
I am the reason for this.
And you can't bet on them tomorrow night.
Look, I almost took them at halftime. I saw a plus 550, and I almost took them at halftime.
You know what? Full permission. Go ahead and bet. We'll see what happens because you'd be a rich young man right now if you would have started at the beginning of this winning streak. I mean, I
was on when they were losing. I was betting them every week.
I know it's nuts. And did you happen to see the matches decided by 1 goal stat for them?
I didn't
Since the beginning of 2023. Yep, beginning of 2023 season. Matches decided by 1 goal. They are 23-4.
That's actually
which is
insane.
nuts. I think
that is a crazy stat for any sport.
Yeah, I think they've got 23 wins. I think the next closest to them is something like 12. Winners of it's that stat is something else, and that's not. You would sit here and think, well, heck, they're due to lose a lot of matches by one goal, and there is some truth to that, but it also tells you they know how to play in these close matches and what to do when they get that one goal lead and hang on to it, and they're very good at that. And kudos to the coaching staff for that. But what they've done and these players they keep bringing in, and everybody's playing a big part in this thing. And man, they are just solidly on fire right now. And 4 goals the other night. They had 3 the one before. That's 7 goals in the last 2 matches.
Well,
so it's an explosion after earlier. They were one of the lowest scoring teams in the entire MLS. Now they're actually in the top half. They're not anywhere near Miami yet, and there's still plenty of teams ahead of them, but it's nothing like it was a few weeks ago when they were anemic.
Have you been watching or have you been scoreboard watching?
Both.
So what's been the most impressive thing to you through this winning streak?
Oh, it's just, the young man with the 2 goals the other night, the new kid from Argentina, but it's him. And then, Kevin Kelsey comes in and he makes an immediate impact. It's just, I guess I would say it's being able to hold the line, like we were talking about with the Reds, when maybe they weren't playing their best, but they were able to salvage some ties. They were able to, hang in there and not get buried in the standings. They stayed in the top half of the standings.
Luca Oriano,
it's pronounced weird. It's like Orachano or I forget now, but that's the dude.
Okay,
comes in, had 2 goals the other night. He's like 5'0", little dude, but obviously very good, and even had a good play on one of the other goals too. So he's and I don't even think he got an assist on that, but it's been pretty darn impressive the way they're fairly relentless, and they played with a lot more energy, I think, over the past month and a half. Something just didn't seem right earlier in the season. It was kind of weird, and Coach Noonan was talking about it, and there's just something, and they've just been electric here lately.
I think the thing that's probably impressed me the most through this winning streak is not anybody in particular, but just the fact that they found different ways to win. They've won by shutouts. They've won by scoring 1 goal. They've won by scoring lots of goals. They've won by allowing the other team to score, but still scoring more. They've won by not allowing, they've done just different ways that they've found ways to win. They've won by 1 goal. They've won by 2 goals. They've won, just nothing's been a cookie cutter seemingly.
No, they adapt to the occasion, which they adapt to the occasion. I think a lot of that is coaching. I really do. I could be wrong because I never coached soccer, but I think a lot of that is coaching. I just think those guys really know what they're doing.
It's impressive. It's fun to see when you look at ESPN that you see the last 5 games instead of seeing D's and L's and W's and all of the 3 letters in some type of weird zany order. You just have WWWWW in the last 5, and to not even have draws in that whole streak. It's not a lossless streak or whatever. It's you've won every single game, which not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And tomorrow night they got Nashville at home. Hopefully they keep it rolling. Hopefully they can keep that rolling.
Cincinnati.
That 1 goal victory stat is just crazy, or that record in 1 goal matches is sick.
Looks like Cincinnati right now is a -140. If you decided to bet it, I don't want to mess with it, George. I
I
don't know if
know.
I'm.
I know. I don't either. I
I
don't
just.
either.
I feel like I would be the one. I don't want to be the
Well,
reason.
and if you're like me, you're always the guy that gets to the party too late, like Bitcoin. It already got the 50 or 60,000 by the time I'm like, I wonder if I should, my buddies were in it when it was like 7,000. So I'm always the guy that misses the damn boat.
That's because we're cautious, George. We're cautious.
I'm too cautious.
Yep.
Except the other night when I hurt that rib, God, I should not have been in that situation. I am totally playing hurt.
In any case, happy to see what the boys down at FC Cincinnati are doing, and we look for them to get another W against Nashville tomorrow. So, Good on you. Anything going on in high school sports?
Well, they're finally down to the regionals in actually Ohio and Kentucky are doing regions this week. Ohio, what do we got left in Ohio? Division One, Moeller, Mason, and Elder all still alive. They got their regional semifinals on Thursday. Mason playing Elder, Moeller playing Butler, and then the winners meet for the regional championship on Friday, and then it's off to the state Final Four the following weekend. So they're getting down to it. Division Two, Baden and Indian Hill are still alive. CCD and Cincinnati Christian, they're in the regional semifinals in Division Three, and then the 9th region tournament going on at Thomas More here in Northern Kentucky. You got Connor and Dixie, Covcath, Ryle. They play, those two games are tomorrow, and the winners meet Thursday. And Kentucky's different because they do the 16 regions. So your regional champ moves on to the state tournament as one of 16 teams, whereas in Ohio, it's just 4 regions, but it's 16 in Kentucky. Don't ask me why, but I do really enjoy the region tournament format in Kentucky, the way it is and it's single elimination, but and I like it in basketball too. It just gets all these teams that are lumped together geographically in one spot for the state tournament, which is kind of cool. And then who else is alive? Campbell County's still alive in the 10th region, Simon Kenton in the 8th, and those games are played later this week too. So Kentucky, I'm imagining, but I didn't look this up, that their state tournament's probably in a couple of weeks, but Ohio will get right after it after they play those regionals this weekend. Then it's on the Columbus.
There you go.
For the state tournament.
Now, you brought up Covcath. Did I see right that Covcath's basketball coach is done?
Oh, I did not.
That?
I did not see it.
Thought I read that somewhere. With
Coach Rizdatz?
With like 2 state titles under their belt. And
Yeah. I should know that, but I don't. But I've had to miss my Northern Kentucky workouts here in the past week, and my spy that has his finger on the pulse would have told me that. But Covcat had a really good year again in baseball, but they do every year. They got like 35 wins or something crazy.
Yeah, them and Mueller seems always talking about them in baseball. So
yeah, they're pretty much good in everything. Football, basketball, baseball, Colonels.
All right. I don't have anything left. I know we're all coming off. It feels like we're all coming off of a Memorial Day weekend to remember. Maybe yours was a little hazier than some with that injury you got, but
yeah, I ran into something, and I might have been a little tipsy. I don't know, but man, you know those things you get the side, like in the ribs. Oh, sometimes it hurts to breathe. There's nothing you can do about it. Take ibuprofen.
Well, get well soon. I know your golf league is going to miss you if you got to miss too much.
Oh yeah. No. I'm hopefully I will be back in action in tournament play Thursday morning.
There you go. We got you covered citywide, high school, like all the sports, even George's personal. So I think
you don't want to hear about that.
On that note, join us again next week, 9 o'clock, for another episode of George in the Jungle. As always, brought to you by Remington Tavern. You can find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But until next week, for my co-host George Vogel, I am Aaron Smith, and we will catch you here 9 o'clock next Tuesday.
Thank you, Aaron.